Hi guys, Olive here. Here today to talk about my book collection. In all of my videos here on this Booktube channel, my book collection is partially visible behind me. These aren't all of my books, but they are a good number of them. But even though a lot of my books are so visible in every single video, when I actually sat down and started thinking about it, I realized that I rarely, if ever, talk about my book collection here on my Booktube channel, and it just seemed wrong to me. So in today's video, I figured I would finally sit down and talk about my extensive book collection that I've been curating over the years. And in order to do that, I'm going to be answering questions from two different tags. The first one I'm going to be taking on is an older tag. It's called the book collector tag. It was created a long time ago by Craig from Books Forever After. That video isn't up anymore, so I can't link it for you in the description box. And Craig's channel is still up, but he doesn't make Booktube videos anymore, so I'm not going to tag him just in case he doesn't want to be bothered, but I at least wanted to verbally give him credit. But let's get to the questions. The first question is, very fittingly, the first question I normally get asked when talking about my book collection with people in real life or with people online. Everybody wants to know, how many books do you own? And for the very first time, maybe ever, I know the answer to this question. And I know the answer to this question because I just got finished with an enormous multi-month project of taking inventory of all of my books. I have had my hands on all of my books over the past few months. I have input all of them into Goodreads. So I now know all the books that I own, how many, what condition they're in. I put all of that into Goodreads and I can export it as a spreadsheet. Before I took on this project, I had no idea how many books I owned. I had a guess, but I couldn't tell you for sure how many books I owned. And to be honest, I was kind of comfortable not knowing. I was okay being in the dark about it. I was scared. I was scared to know the number, and certainly I was scared of counting them all. But when someone asked me how many books I owned in my latest Q&A that I did toward the middle to end of last year, I took a guess, and my guess was that I owned about 1,000. And it turns out that was a really good guess. Not by Price is Right standards, I am a little bit over, but as of right now, I have about 1,080 books. And that's everything. That's all of my fiction, all of my nonfiction, all of my classics, my Russia books, everything. And that is a lot of books, but I don't think it's excessive. I have a lot of space to store these books here in our house, so I'm not drowning in books. At least not yet. The next question is, how long has it taken for you to accumulate your collection? When I start thinking about when my collection really got started, I think about this one day in the spring of, it must have been 2010. I was in college at the time, but I was home on spring break. And my mom used to be a special education teacher. She taught life skills to high school aged kids, and that involved them getting out into the community quite a bit. And on that day, when I was home on spring break, she had taken her students out to this really big book sale. And she called me while they were there and said, "Hey, I think you're going to want to get over here. There are so many good books here." When I say I took home a box of books from that sale, I mean that I literally took home a medium-sized moving box full of books from that sale, and the vast majority of them were books on Russia. I was busy studying Russia back at college. It was definitely my primary interest at the time, and those books that I brought home from that book sale formed the foundation of the Russia book collection that I still have today. But then a few years later, after I had graduated and the man who would become my husband and I moved out here to Pittsburgh, I started going to a lot of library book sales. That's actually how I learned my way around this city. I learned my way around Pittsburgh by navigating to all of these different book sales. It was a very effective method of learning the city of Pittsburgh. And I started really acquiring books at that time. It's very easy to. They are so cheap at those sales. A lot of sales have hardcovers for $1. So I really started to acquire a lot of books at that time. A lot of them were fiction books that I have since gotten rid of in my Trash My Bookshelves project last year. So yeah, I would say that my Russia book collection started about 12 years ago in 2010. And then the rest of my books I have been collecting for about a decade. The next question asks, how often do you buy books? And for me, it really depends, because sometimes I'll go long stretches of time without buying any books at all, and then other times I'm acquiring a lot of books because certain online stores are having sales or there are a ton of library book sales happening. Those sales tend to be really seasonal. A lot of the library book sales happen in the spring and the fall, so that's when I acquire a lot of books. But on average, maybe once every other week. If this question were asking how often do you acquire books, I would probably have to answer differently because publishers send me a lot of books, not just because I have this Booktube channel, but mainly because I am also a freelance written book reviewer for various venues. So I'm getting books in the mail from publishers quite a bit. But I don't think you would consider that buying books because I haven't bought them and I'm getting them because I need them for work. Next, how do you arrange your books? And I actually just rearranged all the books that you see behind me late last year. It was my original intention to vlog that whole process, but then on the day that I rearranged them, basically everything went wrong. It was a really rough day. So that video did not come to fruition. But right now, the shelves behind me hold mainly nonfiction. These two big shelves on the sides have nonfiction, and I made it so that they're arranged by subject matter, but one topic kind of flows into the next topic as you go along. You'll see what I mean when I do my big bookshelf tour. This middle shelf behind me holds mainly favorites, books that I've read and loved and wanted to keep around because I thought I would reread them if that ever happens to a book and I want to keep it. That's where it goes. There are also some miscellaneous books on that shelf right now just because I had some extra space, so I threw them there. But I have other bookshelves in this room as well. I have a tall, skinny shelf over in this area that has all of my fiction books. Then over here, I have one shelf full of Russia books. That collection continues into the closet behind the camera because I just have too many for just one shelf. And then I have a newer shelf right over here that contains classic books and sports books. And then I have a sunroom, and in that sunroom, there is one big shelf of classics and one small shelf of bird books. Again, you will get a chance to see all of these when I do that bookshelf tour. The next question is, what is the first book you can remember buying? And I wasn't actually going to mention any books that I got in my childhood or my teenage years in this video, since most of them aren't in my collection anymore, and I really wanted to talk about my book collection in today's video. But then I remembered that I actually still have my copy of the complete poems of Emily Dickinson that I got when I was rather young. I think I must have been 14 or 15. I remember really enjoying a lot of these poems, and maybe that's just because I was an angsty teenager, because God only knows what I actually understood in these poems. I don't even understand poetry that well today, so I don't know how a 14 or 15-year-old version of me would have understood everything in here. I haven't tried to pick this up since. Maybe I should, but I have owned it this whole time. We're going more recent with this next question because it asks, what is the last book you purchased? And I don't know exactly which book of my new books was the latest to arrive. When they come in the mail, they come into this room and then just kind of become part of the herd. But I will give you a little sneak peek into my next book haul, which is coming soon. I ordered Devotion by Hannah Kent off of Book Depository. It is a gorgeous edition. I actually saw that indie bookstores in the UK got an even more gorgeous edition of this. It looks like this, but it also has painted edges and the whole nine. I couldn't get that because I live in the United States, so I settled for this one. The next question is, what is the longest book that you own? And I actually had to consult Goodreads for this one because I own a lot of long books and I didn't really want to flip to the ends of all of them in order to consult their page counts. But according to Goodreads, the longest book in my collection is the classic revenge tale, The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. This book is 1,264 pages long, and I actually had no idea how beloved a classic this book is until I put it on my Classics TBR for last year. And unlike some other books on that Classics TBR for 2021, I actually did read this one last year. Took me a long time, but I did it. And after I read this book, I actually made a whole video on revenge stories and why we find them so fascinating, like the psychology of that. I'll link that video for you in the description box below and up in the cards in case you're interested. And then the opposite question is, of course, what is the shortest book that you own? And again, after consulting Goodreads, it seems like the shortest book in my collection is the poetry collection from Helen Macdonald called Shaler's Fish. This book is only 82 pages long. It doesn't really seem that short, does it? I think the fact that this is a hardcover makes it appear a little bit longer. I don't know. Even though it is so short, I actually haven't read it yet, but I definitely want to, since I basically worship Helen Macdonald. But that was it for the first set of questions. Now let's move into the second set of questions. And these questions are from the book collection tag that was created by Laura from the channel Why the Book Wins. I will link that original video for you in the description box below. The first question in this tag is, what book are you most proud to own? And I'm going to answer this question with The Women of the Copper Country by Mary Doria Russell. And this book is really special to me, not because it's anything special to look at. I mean, it's just kind of your basic historical fiction paperback. But this book is really special because inside of the book is my very first blurb. I reviewed this book for the online literary journal Open Letters Review, which is run by the one and only Steve Donahue here on Booktube. I reviewed a number of books for them before I was blurbed for the first time in this book. And it really was a milestone for me. I've had other milestones blurb-wise since then, but this book will always be really special to me because this is the first time that my words that I wrote appeared in a paperback. And it's extra special because this is a Mary Doria Russell book, and I think she's amazing. I admire her so much. So to have a few of my words inside of one of her books, it definitely makes me very proud. Okay, the second question is, what is a book that slipped through your fingers, or what is one that you wanted to buy, but it's just too expensive? I have a story for this one, and this one actually happened very recently. Okay, so a while back, I heard about these very special illustrated editions of The Night Circus that this small company was going to be making in limited quantities and producing. Like, these are gorgeous books. They were going to have those illustrations, like very detailed illustrations. They're going to be special made, have like a crimson ribbon to stand in for like the red scarf in the book. They looked absolutely gorgeous. And you had to sign up for this company's newsletter in order to find out more about them and in order to be alerted about the pre-order, because these don't come out until later this year. So I signed up for that newsletter, and I loved getting those emails because they would give you sneak peeks at the illustrations, and they would tell you how everything was going, like how production was going and whether or not they were on target with their release date. And then the pre-order day rolled around, and I didn't know what the prices of these books were going to be until I clicked on that link. And I couldn't believe my eyes. Just for context, there are 3 tiers of these editions. There's the cheapest tier, then the middle tier, then the highest tier. They obviously get more ornate and therefore more expensive as you go up the tiers. So I figured I would just get the one in the cheapest tier, right? Well, that cheapest tier, those editions cost just shy of 300 pounds, which is about 400 US dollars. And then the most expensive editions, which they're almost sold out of, by the way. I think they made like 26 of them, and I think the last time I checked, there were something like 2 left. Those are 2,000 pounds or 2,600 American dollars. I knew they were going to be pricey, but I figured that the most expensive one would be something like $500 to $600, meaning that the lowest tier would maybe be something like $150. And then I could get it for myself as a late birthday present because these come out in November and I have a late October birthday. But I just can't justify spending that much money, $400, on a book. And then if it cost me that amount of money, I'm probably not going to want to read it. I'm going to be afraid of messing it up or getting it dirty with my hands. I'm not going to lie about it. I am still drooling over those editions, just from afar, with the understanding that they will never be mine. It is a love unrequited. I am Jay Gatsby. Those books are my Daisy. But I'll link all the details for you in the description box below if you too would like to gawk at those books, or in case you've hit the lotto and you're looking for something to spend your winnings on, in which case feel free to buy me one as well. In the meantime, I'm just going to be sticking with my original copy of The Night Circus, which I found at a library book sale. That is how I discovered this book for the first time. I have read this book. I have reread this copy. I will reread this over and over again for years to come, and it still will have just cost me $1. Question number 3 is, what is the most you have paid for a book, or what is the most expensive book you own? I don't know exactly, because like I was saying in the previous question, I don't tend to spend that much money on like a single book. If those cheapest tier editions of The Night Circus had been about $150, like I thought they were going to be, and had I bought one of those for myself for my birthday, that would have been a very special case. That probably would have been the most expensive book I owned then, because I don't like to spend a ton of money on just one book. However, there is the rare case where I will spend a little bit more than I ordinarily would on a single book if it is a Reader's Digest World's Best Reading Edition. I was really surprised there wasn't a question in either one of these tags asking whether or not you collect a specific edition of books, mainly meaning the classics, because I do. So I guess I'll just add in that question myself. I collect these Reader's Digest World's Best Reading Editions. They are these really sturdy, often illustrated books. They all look different. For example, look how cool that one is. Wuthering Heights. They're just amazing books. I love these books. I have a ton of them now. I've been collecting them for quite some time. That one bookshelf full of classics in my sunroom that I was talking about, it's almost completely full of these editions. And because I've been collecting them for some time, I have all of the more common ones, but now I'm on the hunt for the rarer books within this collection. And because they're more difficult to find, it means that I'm on eBay quite a bit. A lot of times those eBay sellers want way more for those editions than I am personally willing to pay. But every so often, if I have a little bit of extra money, if I'm looking to treat myself, then I'll splurge a little bit and spend upwards of $45 or $50 on an edition, which is about what I paid for this edition of Mansfield Park. I really love Mansfield Park. I definitely wanted this edition. It was very clean. It's in great shape. So I think it was worth it. And I would absolutely love to have the rest of the Jane Austen books in these editions. I think I have 4 out of the total 6. I really want Persuasion, but it's in such a beautiful edition and it is so rare that people want like $200 for it on eBay, and I just can't justify paying that. The next question is, do you budget for your book buying? And I don't, but not because I'm careless with my money. I was raised by a single parent, so I've had an awareness of my finances. I've had a financial IQ basically since I was a child. I am very aware of how much money is coming in, how much money is going out, and I just have never even come close to overdoing it. I'm not a big spender, so you can probably tell by me discussing those fancy editions and how I don't want to spend that much money. Like, I just don't feel right about it. So I know how much I can spend. I never even spend that. So we're good. The next question is, what book have you got for a screamin' deal? And I could answer this question with a lot of books because I go to library book sales and there are some fairly new books there for very cheap. But I will go back to the topic of the world's best reading editions, not just because I could talk about those all day, but because if you're on the hunt for a rare edition, you can sometimes, if you're lucky, find a seller on eBay who doesn't quite know what they have, and they'll list it for a normal price instead of an inflated price that some of the booksellers will try to get out of you. So on 2 different occasions, I was on the hunt for this dual edition of Ethan Frome and Summer by Edith Wharton. I love Edith Wharton. I wanted the 3 different editions of her books within the world's best reading editions. I wanted those 3 books by her. I had the other 2, The Age of Innocence and The House of Mirth, but I wanted this last one, this bind up of Ethan Frome and Summer. And on 2 different occasions, I tried to pay more than I ordinarily would for just one single book for this edition because I loved it so much. And both times I tried to do that, the order got canceled with no explanation. But then one day I was just casually browsing eBay and I saw a listing for the book for way cheaper than I was going to pay in those 2 orders that got canceled. I was over the moon. The next question is, what author do you own the most books of? And ironically enough, my answer to this is Edith Wharton. Obviously, she only has those 3 books in the world's best reading editions, but I have older editions, a bunch of used copies of most of her books. I think I have most of them at this point. And she was prolific, so she actually takes up one entire shelf on my little shelf of sports books and classics over here. The next question in this tag, question number 7, is what book do you own the most editions of? And since I just got done going through my entire book collection, I can tell you that I don't have more than 2 editions of any book in my collection. I do have some duplicates. I do have both a hardcover and paperback edition of Rules of Civility, my favorite book of all time. And then most of the rest of my duplicates are classics because I have the world's best reading editions and sometimes I already had that classic in a different edition. So like Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I got this edition, but I already had this illustrated edition. Same thing goes for Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This is the Reader's Digest edition of it. Beautiful. And I also have this gorgeous older edition of it. Next is the final question in this tag, the final question I'll be answering in this video. And that question is, what is the most beautiful book you own? This is a very challenging question to answer because I have a lot of gorgeous books in my collection, but one that I've always had a special place in my heart for is this book, Fireflies, Honey, and Silk by Gilbert Waldbauer. I love this illustration on the front. There are also lots of little illustrations done by this same illustrator throughout this book, but what puts this book over the edge for me are these honeycomb embossed end papers. I don't know if you can see that, but it's actually like a honeycomb. It feels like honeycomb, and I just love this book. This book is from the University of California Press, and I'm not at all surprised because some of the most beautiful, most well-designed books that I personally own or books that I've seen in the wild, they come from university presses. University press books can sometimes be a little bit more expensive than a normal book, but it's worth it because they put so much more care into their books than a big publisher does. They don't put out as many books as a big publisher does, so they can really give those books the love and the attention that they deserve, and it shows in the finished product. But those were all the questions that I'm going to answer in today's video. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about my book collection. I love my books very much, so I was definitely happy to share. Since I created a little bit of a tag mashup in this video, I kind of Frankensteined two different tags together. I won't tag anyone in case you don't want to do this specific style, but in case you do, if you do want to take this on, please feel free to do so, and you can also feel free to say that I tagged you if you would like to. Any comments or questions you may have on anything you've seen in this video or about anything in general can go down in the comment section below. I always love hearing from you, but if you would like to keep up with what I am reading and writing about right now, you can find me on a variety of places around the internet, including Goodreads and Instagram, where I'm the most active. The links to all of my profiles will be at the bottom of the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.